Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello, I'm Ron. Last name is Guida. This is Ed Molinari. We decided to kind of corner all the vowels. So it's good to meet you. I'm not Zach. I don't have the glasses, so I'm replacing him for this event. Show of hands.
That is me, though, unfortunately.
Yeah. How many folks here know Rackspace? You know, oh, good. Wow. Excellent. So just to give you a little background, you know, the company itself has a vision. And again, I'm Ron, this is Ed. Ed's one of our senior solutions architects. I run the channel area group within this region for Rackspace. So the vision of the company, just to give you a little bit of background, we really are missioned and focused on becoming one of the world's greatest services companies, right? So we're kind of moving our way closer to customer capture and customer vision on an ongoing basis. So that's kind of encapsulated a bit about wanting to be one of the world's greatest services companies. So it's something that we embody day in and day out in our company. A little mathematics around Rackspace. It's about a $2 billion company. We are public, although we're moving from being a public company to a private company. That's in the last quarter. We have about 6,000 employees, around 10,000 or around 10 to 11 data centers throughout the world. Multiple offerings that Ed's going to talk a bit about, and we'll kind of jump right into it.
Okay. So starting off again, Ed Molinari from Rackspace, 3.5-year Racker, right? My role at Rackspace is to work with customers on a daily basis, right? From a technical stewardship standpoint, and also I like to say to keep the sales reps on the path of virtue, right? So my role at Rackspace is both high-level and low-level design, and I work with companies in every vertical, every type of organization, large and small, in helping them on their journey to cloud, right? And some of the things that we talk about with that journey are things that you're going to hear me say over and over today, right? The cloud-enabled enterprise. It's a common theme, something I work with folks on all the time, right? The second thing is just taking an idea about the semantics of cloud. What does that mean, right? It means different things to different people. It started out meaning any service on the other end of a wire, right? But there's a lot of different permutations of that. And in what I do, I work with customers that are deploying bare metal, that are deploying virtualized solutions on Hyper-V, VMware, and OpenStack, and are deploying public clouds on Azure and AWS. The most important part of that, though, is in the enterprise, is that it's a combination of a lot of those technologies in what we've come to refer to as multi-cloud or hybrid, right? That's the true success criteria in the enterprise, because every workload has a place, right? And we say cloud is for everybody, but not for everything, right? And the last common theme you're going to hear me talk about today is something that probably is the reason as most of you are here. In realizing multi-cloud, latency is a buzzkill, okay? The latency is a buzzkill, and I'm going to tell you a couple of stories and realistic things I've been through with customers that show why latency prevents folks or impacts folks or a major impediment to realizing multi-cloud. But going back to a little bit about Rackspace again, I kind of gave you the intro there, right? We're working across multiple platforms. The secret sauce of Rackspace is the management components, right? There are folks here, maybe some of you in the room, they're experts at providing the connectivity, providing the secret sauce to make one thing talk to another, right? We look at that as a network resource. We combine that with compute and storage to make this thing work, right? To make this cloud work. What is that cloud? Again, it can be based on OpenStack, it could be based on VMware, or it could be the 3,000-pound gorillas that we all know about in the public cloud arena, Amazon and Microsoft, right? But the important thing to realize about Rackspace, before I change slides and talk about something else, is that the form factor is less important to us. Yeah. It's really finding the right home for the workload, right? Every workload, as I said earlier, has its place. Okay, this slide here may be something, and I think I may have jumped one too fast. This slide may be something that a lot of you, or if any of you are decision makers in the IT realm, are faced with, right? And that is the fact that today, to be able to develop next-gen apps, to become cloud consumers, there's a fundamental change in the way IT needs to operate, right? The provisioning cycles, the same way that we've done things for a long time, now need to change, in a different skill set, mindset, and tool set needs to come into place to make multi-cloud a reality. And not even with multi-cloud, even with a single private cloud, right? What we're seeing and what our customers are telling us is that they are becoming asked to become the service brokers. They are asked to become the platform in the middle, so to speak, right? That abstracts the form factors that the actual workloads will run on and provide their users with a way to consume cloud resources that abstracts that entire complexity from them, right? This is what is typically referred to as the cloud brokerage model. Is anybody here in IT that's been asked by their constituency to provide cloud-like resources, but in a private cloud in their own four walls? Is that a common theme at all for anybody here? Okay, because it's something that we see very often, right? Yeah. It's not about taking a credit card as a developer and going out swiping the credit card and standing up a couple of AWS servers. Anybody can do that. It's not about standing up 10,000 AWS servers and have to explain back to the procurement folks what you just did with that science project. It's about the stewardship of those resources and how you build a service catalog with automation, with usage-based billing, monitoring ticket, and integrate that into a CMDB. That piece of software or that brokerage role is what I call the one ring to rule them all, okay? Because not everybody has a way of actually achieving this today, right? A lot of different clouds, a lot of different form factors. Folks have to have a way to actually tie that together. That's one of the things that Rackspace excels at doing. Okay? But even before we get to become a service brokerage, how do companies actually go about realizing a multi-cloud strategy? Well, one of the common themes that we see from our constituency is sort of what I'll call a distilling tower model. Or if you don't like distilling tower, I don't know, maybe some of you have kids, or maybe you can remember back when you had a bank when you were a kid, and you put all these different coins in the top, and then it sorted them out into nickels, dimes, quarters, and pennies for you, okay? Well, that distilling tower model is the same for applications, right? You kind of pour your apps into the top of the distilling tower, and the first thing that comes out is what we call low-hanging fruit. Purpose-built applications in a SaaS model that you can consume by the seat. Examples of those things are going to be Salesforce, Exactly, right? Box, I said Salesforce. The big one is O365, right? They're consumables that you can grab and buy by the seat. Internet connectivity usually doesn't take anything beyond basic connectivity to be able to talk over the internet to talk to these SaaS type applications. That's what we typically see pop out first, right? Companies take those, they're purpose built, and you know what, in a small medium business, the ideal thing, right, the holy grail is to have a browser with 20 bookmarks, one for each one of your applications, done. No IT, no data center, no nothing, right? That's the holy grail. Might be able to realize that in a small, medium business, but as the application suite gets bigger and there are a lot more interrelationship, that kind of thing starts to fade away. Because what happens next is out of that distilling tower, the next thing that we see pop out are applications that can run in multi-cloud, right? That can run, and usually it's bifurcated. Things that can run as a PaaS and things that can run as an IaaS. And I'll give you an example of how that's different, right? Just this week, actually, Zach was not here today, and I met with a customer, right? So they were talking about transforming and migrating their application to our data centers and our managed services. As they were talking about it, they started out as selling licenses to clinical software licenses. They didn't realize that by capturing information from those endpoints, they now had a data set that they could turn around and use, right, to have many more touch points with their clients. They even took it further, and they took that data and built a data warehouse that they actually call manufacturing. Even though they don't make anything physical, what they manufacture is data. And they use that with their marketing partners. They use that with just-in-time inventory delivery for drugs. They use that for a panoply of reasons, right? And it is actually the major revenue source of that company today, although by all means, they're in the veterinary healthcare industry, okay? Once we heard what they did, it started to stagger our imaginations. Wow, man, we're gonna have this big farm of worker instances that ingest these files out of the SaaS application. We're gonna fire those through big data Hadoop clusters to do the MapReduce analysis and put those into structured NoSQL databases, all next-gen stuff. We were psyched until their application owner got up, and by the way, that is an ideal PaaS-type solution, right? That's what we were thinking we could do. Till their application owner got up and started drawing the interconnects to third parties, started to drawing the interrelationships of all the data feeds, that idea about PaaS came to a grinding halt. There is no way that we would take on transforming that with some sort of a magic wand into a PaaS platform, right? But we can lift it and we can shift it, right? And we can put that in a data center and give them connectivity that they need to their third parties because it's a lift and shift. And you know what? What this customer wanted to do as a phase one because of a divestiture is they had to get out of their own data center. So we're able to help them regardless of the fact that we can't wave that magic wand and quote unquote cloudify what they do in one fell swoop. Going back to that distilling tower again, that's why at the second level, things pop out on two different levels, right? Things that are going to pertain to IaaS, where you're going to lift and shift applications, and things where you're going to transform them into a PaaS. Lastly, what comes out the bottom, right? The 10W40, I won't say sludge because that'll give it a negative connotation, but lastly, what comes out of the bottom are the apps that aren't going to move to cloud, right? How many here believe that there will be applications that won't move to the public cloud or any type of cloud in the near future? It was a leading question. Come on, I need more hands than that. Everybody believes that they can move what they do successfully to AWS and Azure today? No? Yes?
Nope.
We'll talk about that a little bit later, all right, for folks that think that they can. And I'd love to hear the stories and how complex those apps are. Because the second question I would ask, right, if you can, how mission critical and how much revenue generation are done on those applications? I always look at it this way. I'll be glad to move a bank's ATM finder into a public cloud. I certainly am not going to help them move the part of the apps that register my paycheck. Okay, that's today. And I'm not saying it's going to always be there. Look, mainframes are still here, right? And they were supposed to be gone a long time ago. Anyway, back to our distilling tower. When we get to the bottom, we have apps that are not ready for cloud and are not going to be ready for cloud. What do you do with those apps, right? And those typically are going to be apps that fail a test on Amazon's 4 pillars for cloudification, which are reliability, security, performance, and now comes the test, I got to cheat, cost, okay? The 4 pillars of cloud. For one or another reason, those last bit of applications are going to fail that test and they're going to remain in a corporate data center of some kind. That can be in your own 4 walls and that can be at a digital realty facility, right? Why would you put it at a digital realty facility? Well, again, from our standpoint, latency is buzzkill. Chances are that when you do that analysis and all of these different things come out of your distilling tower at different levels, they are still going to need to interrelate at some point. They are still going to need data feeds. They are still going to make calls back to batch processes. They are still going to need to reach other mashups in a lot of cases, especially in the case of next-gen apps, right? They're going to make API calls. They're going to be integrated into a larger whole. Do you want to have that headache at your data center, increase those pipes, and worry about internet route mile latency? Probably not, right? And this is one of the things that Rackspace does that is very unique also, in that we build private clouds, dedicated single tenancy, that can run those applications for you, and we can drop those into a data center like DRT and give you the cross connects, right, to remove the latency challenge and the multi-cloud management challenge at a DRT facility. This is something that makes Rackspace very unique, right? And we're not locked into providing services at our own data center, right? Our multi-cloud strategy says that regardless of the form factor and the location, we'll be able to overlay what we call fanatical support, which is our branding and our intelligence and what has made us upper right Gartner players in the Magic Quadrant. We can take that and do that regardless of the form factor or the location. How are we doing so far? Interesting, not interesting? Where are we going?
Good.
Yeah?
All right.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, you know, again, I like to tell stories, right? And, you know, I want to tell you another story. Latency is a buzzkill story, right? Working with a customer, and this customer happened to be a very large digital company, and they came to us for a hybrid cloud solution. They were hell-bent on putting part of their apps into AWS, right? We could not make this work because their calls back to Oracle, the way they implemented their Oracle backend, was not going to change, and it was way too chatty, right? Their apps are way too chatty to make it practical, even with running home runs into a direct connect, right? That was one example. Again, latency was a buzzkill for that project for us, right? If we had the availability of dropping that cloud into a DRT facility, we could make that go away. Another customer that it did work out for, they took a radical change, and what they did is build their Oracle infrastructure by providing an entire caching tier with a technology called coherence, which allowed and bought, basically what it did, it buy time for their app to talk to their database. That cost a lot of money. Everybody knows Larry Ellison likes boats and islands, right? Coherent technology from Oracle is very, very expensive, right? So now, with the type of technologies that we have in SDNs, to be able to take this type of traffic from a DRT facility back to Amazon, we can make those clouds realistic and without the expense that somebody has to go through of completely redoing the way they've built their Oracle clusters. Is that a question? Oh, okay. So again, going on this brokerage model, the main point about the brokerage model, again, is, as I said, I call it the one ring to rule them all. This is the single panacea. This is the single pane of glass that everybody is going to look at and have workload mobility, right? Yeah. Great, it sounds terrific. Until you find out that that VM that you're trying to move has a 2 terabyte data set connected to it. How are you going to move that over, you know, your couple of, even a DS3 out to the internet, right? Or a 100 meg pipe out to the internet. That doesn't work out very well. Even the software today that can actually translate the VMs from one cloud to another and make this whole brokerage thing and mobility thing a reality, it's a speed of light issue. You can't just drag those data sets. As application developers, we got to learn to decouple, right, the storage from the compute instances. Very important to achieve VM mobility, right? Because at that point, your compute instance, you pick that up, you drag it anywhere. You use that one ring to rule them all software, and you can pick it up and drop it. That software can be proprietary stuff from VMware. They have answers for it. Microsoft has answers for it. There's third-party things like Service Mesh, Graviton, ServiceNow that can do it. But the main point of that is that until all of those VMs and this new paradigm of working in multi-cloud is realized, chances are you're going to have big, fat, honking VMs that are going to be difficult to move unless you have a low latency connection to be able to let that cloud tool move that VM from one cloud to another. Once again, pointing back to the low latency that can be achieved by putting your applications and your infrastructure in a DRT facility and leveraging their cloud exchange. Let's move on here. There's a, I think I already hit on this. It says security at the bottom. I'm going to talk to you about some security challenges with multi-cloud in a little bit. But again, I think this slide is up here to kind of reinforce a Rackspace point of view.
Right.
And that Rackspace point of view is, once again, from a lot of standpoints, I mean, we don't manage, we won't take anything, right? I just looked at something where somebody was running like, I don't know, CentOS 4 or something like that. We can't just pick up anything and manage it. We have standards, we have points of view, and we have to maintain those standards or migrate you to our standards, right, in order for us to take on management. But the real challenge is, again, when you start looking at your portfolio of applications and all these things are popping out at different points, you have to build different management methodologies for these different clouds and how to consume SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, and private cloud, right? And again, until we get to that one ring rules them all, where we can use one pane of glass to manage everything, when you have all of these different platforms, you have to have a way to manage them. And if you don't have the skill set, and don't underestimate the skill set, right? It's easy with a credit card to go on to Amazon and build servers. And as I said, it's easy to go on Amazon and put an auto-scale group that can keep ahead of a DDoS attack and build 10,000 servers, right? But it's not easy to manage that infrastructure and understand exactly how money is being spent in that infrastructure. Those are the management tools that make consumption in the cloud important. Those are the management methodologies that Rackspace adds to a multi-cloud strategy. SaaS, we manage O365. Infrastructure and PaaS, the wide panoply of AWS and Azure services, and private cloud, going back to what I said in the beginning about bare metal and dedicated single-tenant clouds that run VMware, OpenStack, and Hyper-V. Hybrid cloud themes. I'm actually going to skip this one because I'd rather tell you a little bit about what we see in the enterprise as hybrid cloud challenges. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to skip this one and go on to another slide. And again, here, this slide is again reinforcing what we do in the multi-cloud arena from an infrastructure as a service perspective, right? We can stand up VMware, Hyper-V, OpenStack in our own data center. We can do it at your data center. We can do it at DRT. Think of it as a managed pod. We build the networks, the remote capabilities to manage those infrastructures and also help with the touch points to your wide area networking and whatever connects you have to any type of cloud services. We build that as a comprehensive whole. We typically refer to as a pod. Those pods can be built on commodity hardware, and for those that don't know, Rackspace is very involved and a big supporter and participant in the Open Compute Foundation. So we actually have our own branded Open Compute that we can deploy at scale OpenStack clouds with, right? Again, very important because as folks look to transform into all of these technologies, you either have to learn it or you have to acquire the skill set rapidly, right? A lot of folks are taking the approach, and we hear this from CIOs, CTOs all the time. I want to consume it. I don't even want to know how it works. I want to ride on an SLA. That's it, right? And again, that is kind of the approach when I earlier said small business wants those 20 links in their browser. It's the same philosophy. They want to be able to click. They want their consumers of IT to have self-service and be able to click on things and replicate that public cloud experience within their own four walls. Very important facet of private cloud. The obligatory marketing slide. The eye chart, okay? This kind of gives you an idea of the spectrum of what Rackspace does, right? And again, I've said it 3 or 4 times. It's really based on private cloud, on OpenStack, Hyper-V, and VMware, and our management methodologies overlaid on the big guys out there, right? AWS and Azure. And how you tie those together. Remember, they have links. Those public clouds have links already in the DRT facilities. Just imagine with me for a second, right? You have your infrastructure co-located in one of those facilities with low latency cross connects, right? Now you can take advantage of bursting. Now you can take advantage of what we always see as that distilling tower, putting the right application in the right bucket, but we've made one of the big challenges, latency, go away, right? It's again, I said it several times about latency being a huge impediment to making a lot of these interrelationship works. Not everybody, I mean, does anybody have gigabit internet out to the internet here at their home offices or data centers? Does anybody have 100 meg? Okay, right, you know, 100 meg is a fat pipe, right? When you talk about internet traffic, the main point of all of that is that when, you know, even if you've got the speed, the second part is the distance, right? Not everybody happens to have, you know, a one-hop network experience from a major POP in the United States, right? Especially if you're riding a big carrier MPLS network that's got internet gateways strategically placed around the country. And we all know all of the, if you want to get into deep level technical stuff, the BGP flapping and hot potato routing that goes on between carriers, they want you off their networks as fast as possible, right? CDNs and a lot of these technologies ameliorate these things. There's a bunch of different ways to do this with direct connection to POPs like Hudson Street and 111 8th Avenue or Halsey Street over in Jersey, right? Speed of light is, at least while Stephen Hawking, until he finds out a way around it, speed of light is going to be speed of light, right? So again, imagine with me, right? You want to consume these apps. You want to develop this multi-cloud strategy according to that distilling tower or that kid penny bank type scenario where you're isolating the right platform, but you need to tie them all together. Again, it goes back to location, 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 right? You've got to be in the right location. There's no other way around that today. Other things about networks, right? I gave you an example of like Oracle apps, right? The chattiness of them, right? When we lift and shift applications, very often we're given, you know, we're not given a chance to go back and refactor them, right? It's a fact of life. We're going to make this transition. We're going to do it how it is today. It's great when we see folks that want to take the step back and want to refactor those applications, make them API-driven, decouple them, right? Using the term decouple the application to start to use technologies like queues, right? And worker roles and driver nodes to be able to flex and react to the actual workload, right? That's a true cloudy application that's built to fail horizontally, right? It's great when we hear about the automation aspects. We call it nuke and pave, right? I build a virtual machine. I care for that server. The old, sort of the, I shouldn't say old, the traditional systems management approach is, hey, I built that server, I'm going to take care of it. It's Waldo, right? I want to make sure Waldo is patched and fed and tuned and that he's got the best hardware. Well, in the cloud paradigm today, guess what? You shoot Waldo and you bring up another Waldo with an automatic script, right? The actual VMs become less important. The horizontal scalability of that cloud is what becomes important. And that is only done through automation. That's typically what we hear about DevOps. And by the way, Rackspace has a practice around DevOps. Going back to networks, a lot of things that in best practices in networks don't change. You want isolation. You want to have the same kind of paradigms about bastion hosts and so forth that you use in your own data centers. You want those to persist regardless of where you live. But I'll tell you, one of the most radical things for me as a network guy for many years, learning about clouds, is what I used to call the life of a packet, right? I used to be able to go out there with my trace routes, right, and see the firewall, see the load balancer, let it, you know, it hit a reverse proxy on a Linux server, all that technical jazz, right? The life of a packet. Guess what? It's now like Ragu in the cloud. It's built in there. You got to take your word for it. It's there. There are security groups. There are NACLs. There are all of these technologies, right? And you have either an API to drive them, or you've got a GUI to go look at what's happening. But you've got to have your circle of trust now has to extend out to that cloud provider. Very different paradigm when moving applications to clouds. We get asked all the time, where's the firewall? Well, it's there. I can't tell you exactly where it is. I don't think I can ping it, but it's there, right? Again, just some of the challenges, just some of the changes in networking. I told you a little story about Oracle, again, from a latency standpoint. There's a lot of things, as I said, that don't change in best practices in VLANing and subnetting and the way you build availability zones, right? These things are all things that we want to carry forward, right? Best practices, regardless of the form factor. And that's a Rackspace point of view as well. Very quickly, as we're getting low on time, right? Systems management and tooling, I talked to you about a single pane of glass. Look for single panes of glass that realize that you are running a cloud infrastructure.
Right.
There are so many ISVs today that have not built their software to realize that an instance might be there today and it's gone tomorrow. And they were looking for that same IP address to register and bill you for it. There's a major encryption company that I work with, right? No names mentioned. They can't figure this out because they expect that once I build a VM and I put that agent in it, it's going to be there forever. It doesn't work that way anymore, right? So make sure when you're looking at tooling that it is cloud aware. Very, very important. Any type of tooling and actually any type of software that you got to pay licensing fees for. From a security standpoint, hit on this a couple of times, right? You got to expand the circle of trust. At Rackspace, we have developed an entire practice around proactive security. And I'm not talking about managing a firewall or an IDS and wait until the burglar alarm goes off to give you a phone call. I'm talking about proactive people that might sound a little weird, but are already on your systems looking for trouble. These are people that are ex-military. These are people that are white hat hackers. These are people that know how to look for trouble, right? And the idea is, the philosophy is, it's not a if, it's a when. Right. And when it happens, you got to mitigate it and you got to get them out of there very, very quickly. You got to identify and remediate as fast as possible. Portability and migration, touched on this, right? A cloud is a cloud is a cloud, even a VMware cloud and a VMware cloud, or I got to say, Microsoft has probably done the best job I've seen in portability, right? And taking a workload that's running on premise and giving you the ability to migrate that. In my opinion, they've done the best job out there. VMware, so-so, just read an article last night that Amazon and Google are now going to look at ways to go the other way. From public cloud, they want to give you tools to run those workloads in Amazon and Google-like environments in your own private cloud. There's a lot of challenges built into all of these things. The main point is that companies like Rackspace, we are the upper right Gartner player in managing clouds. We know where these things are, right? So as you go on that journey, and look, I love to learn, right? There's nothing wrong getting your hands dirty and getting involved in a lot of this stuff. When it starts to become mission critical, unless you've got the talent on staff or you want to maintain that talent, you leverage a company like us. We help you define and build clouds that can be built on premise, including at a DRT facility to cut down that buzzkill. I'm going to leave it at that and take questions. I know we're running out of time. Hopefully this was useful for you. Be glad to talk. I'll be around for a bit. If anybody has any questions, be glad to answer them.
I think we have time for maybe 2 questions, and then we're going to get downstairs where we can ask the Rackspace guys some more questions. Go ahead.
So in terms of security, if you have customers running a multi-cloud environment, let's say Amazon and Google, one or both of them, what additional level of security can you provide given that it's not your underlying physical cloud node?
So again, right, it's what we call Rackspace Managed Security. This was a very difficult thing for me to understand as well, right? I was used to seeing a firewall, an IDS, a WAF, all of these point technologies, and yes, they're available in a catalog from AWS. You know what? When you start to employ those, they often become choke points in a cloud environment, right? On the other hand, Rackspace has vetted an entire set of solutions to run in the AWS environment without creating those choke points, and environments that we can manage remotely and completely manage the security aspects of those, both in a consultatory fashion for folks that need to achieve PCI compliance with their QSAs and on an ongoing basis. So Rackspace fully stands up to that security posture. Did that answer it?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, is it security like IDS, IPS, or DDoS, or what specifically?
I'm sorry?
What level of security? Is it IDS, IPS, or DDoS? What type of security?
So the technologies that we employ, we are not certifying. We are helping and enabling all of those certs, right? So we are the enablers, if you will, and the people that are there from a consultatory and an ongoing care and feeding practice of that security infrastructure, but we are not the QSAs and the certifying authority.